So now this is it's no fun anymore. It's like yeah, I know we do want that tends to sleep. I think it's time for us to go back outside. Are you ready? Yeah, let's go put the boots on. Drink water? This chair. Facing the sky. Yeah, someone said there's like right about here. There's 7. This is, even though it's in the big league, it's protection from every day. Yeah, that was down.
Okay, so down is
Forward. Yeah, I was going to say that's
which is which?
That is there, but you could dip around over there. Up is black, down is.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
All right.
Should I start?
Everybody, look at your attention. I'd like to welcome once again Mary Laronde, TFN TAA elder, counselor with TAA, just new election this summer. This will be her second year here with us, and it's amazing to have her.
No, thank you very much. Thank you, PJ. So thank you so much for inviting me again, and it's nice to get to know some of you and some I've known for a long time. And first of all, I just want to acknowledge our elder Alex and acknowledge this beautiful land and this beautiful place here, smooth water, and all of you. And thank you for being here today. So this is a bit of a mishmash, this presentation. I wanted to try to get a little more succinct, so I'm going to try and stay on message though, and I use a PowerPoint because it kind of helps me do that. And some of these things at the very beginning are a little bit just introductory in a sense to a different way of thinking and doing, which kind of defines what we have been dispossessed of in a more of a spiritual, cultural way. Of course, we all know that we've been dispossessed of this beautiful land. And so, and then I want to talk about what we're doing right now and how we could maybe work together and some ideas brewing and some things that we are actually working on. So, I'm sure there are a lot of questions about some of the things that are in the news once in a while, but I wanted to start out with this idea about a land acknowledgement. I was somewhere, where was I? Just the other day, where the land acknowledgement was, this is the First Nation or the Indigenous people's name, which is usually the territory they're from. We are people of the deep water, right? Timiagami means deep water by the shore, and that's who we are. But it also says in the Robinson Huron Treaty area and this kind of thing. But that's all they say. So what you really should be saying, and this was someone asked me about a land acknowledgement, and I say, well, it's not up to us to write land acknowledgements for people, but if you do want one, this would be kind of what you would want to say. You'd want to say, I'd like to acknowledge that we are on a traditional territory of the Timiagami Anishinaabe. One of the misconceptions we have about the land acknowledgement is that it was the homeland territory. It is not historic only. It is true today and will always be true. What this means is that we are settlers here. We are guests of this home. We enjoy the benefits of these lands we call home because of the dispossession and theft of the land. We enjoy the benefits of this land today as a result of the genocidal policies of the colonial government of Canada. The original inhabitants have shared their inheritance, their knowledge, technology, and infrastructure with us. For this, we are forever grateful. We have a huge debt owed to the Timiagami Anishinaabe, a debt of gratitude and justice, and then we can seek reconciliation. Miigwech, merci, thank you. So I just wanted to share that with you as really what land acknowledgement really is essentially about. It's about an acknowledgement that this is stolen land, and this is Timiagami Anishinaabe land, and it can still be Timiagami Anishinaabe land, and everyone can acknowledge that and honor that and respect that, and the sky will not fall. So this is the whole premise that we go forward on, is that we've never been under treaty. The court adhered us to a treaty, and that was a legal theft in that case. And so as long as we're alive, we are the Timiagami Anishinaabe, a living title to the land. And so this is what we need to go forward on, is that that reality. So that's the truth part of the truth and reconciliation from my point of view, and from the work that I've done over the years. I've come to some conclusions about what happened and how things really are. And so, truth telling is not the easiest thing. And so I had the occasion to spend the night at Camp Wabikan for the first time in my entire life. And I grew up right across from Camp Wabikan on Chimo Island, and High Rock is right there. And Wabikan used to be the village for the Timiagami Anishinaabe. For thousands of years, that was our village. Because, and I was telling the lady who is now the current tenant, I said, I said, this was our village. I said, but we were dispossessed. You know that, right? That's why you have this land. And she said, oh, well, she didn't quite know what to say, but she was really open to that whole notion. And so, to me, the whole reconciliation is in the land. That is where the reconciliation in this country is going to happen, where this country will actually find its real footing, which is on Indigenous land and through the treaty relationship, which was started in many years ago. So we, in the treaty relationship, there is no surrender, really. Like how they're interpreted and what was happening is not, is not reality. So you have to, for me, I had to spend so many years unlearning all these things. And so I just thought, so we did have a system of governance, and this is kind of what this is like. So it's a clan system of governance, it's governance by alliances. So today, this kind of system would still work, and we still do recognize our clans and our families, and so the kinship of families, and also that kinship to land as being, and as you know, it's a clan. So I'm Deer Clan, which is in this area is Atik Caribou, and and then the different families and clans, the different clans, I should say, and because different families belong to the same clan, so the different clans have different roles and responsibilities. So that's just something there. The other thing I want to talk to you about is agency. This is something that's come up in my thinking and in my conversations lately, which is, all of a sudden I realized that even ourselves, we don't have the right narrative. We sort of have kind of bought into this colonial narrative that we really got hoodwinked. We got used. We didn't really have the agency or the wherewithal to really know what we were doing, but we did. And so, for like Grey Owl is a good example. I had this conversation with a friend of mine just recently, and just a little exchange, on Facebook of all things. But anyway, that's where a lot of our discourse happens. The comment was about Grey Owl being a pretendian and being the poster boy for cultural appropriation. I started thinking about that. My family are Grey Owl's descendants. Like I had my aunt, my father's sister married Grey Owl's grandson. And I knew Grey Owl's daughter, Agnes Bellini. And so I knew many people that knew Grey Owl. And that when Grey Owl came to Bear Island, with Alex Matias, a different Alex Matias, who was Madeline Cack's husband. And anyway, so he married Angèle Egona, and he was basically adopted. He spoke the language, he lived like we did, he became a part of the community. And whether or not Grey Owl is a scoundrel and a bigamist or a trigamist, or however you say that, and all of the things that he may have done that would be sort of unsavory, and he did abandon his wife in Temagami and his child. Nonetheless, Grey Owl had access to a world stage in a community that we would not have had access to. And he was, I learned, as I learned more about Grey Owl, for example, it's like, we adopted him. It wasn't, we all knew he wasn't an Englishman. Was Grey Owl using us? Is what people want to say, that Grey Owl used us. Well, he used us for what? To live the life that he wanted to live. He says himself that I am Ojibwe. I am an Indian. I think like an Indian. I speak like an Indian. I live like an Indian. In my heart, I am an Indian. I am an Indian. That's what he said. And his second wife said to him, why do you dress up like this? Make a clown of yourself. And, and color your skin and dress up and go. He said, well, because if they would listen to what I have to say about the environment and how we need to live with nature, If I could stand on my head and they would listen to me, I would do that. He said, but this is how they listen to me. Gray Owl died a very poor man, and he was written off probably by his publisher, which is the way that it went. When Gray Owl went to Biscuitacing, he was also invited into that community. So what I'm talking about is agency. We knew he wasn't an Indian. We knew he was an Englishman. We, on our own terms, accepted him into our community. We adopted him. This is a really important point because in 1860, there was a man that came from Stornoway, Scotland, who was adopted by the Tuolumne Anishinaabe, and he was married into Canachensis. He married Canachensis' daughter, and he was given a trapping territory, a traditional territory for him to raise his family. He married Canachensis' widow, and he raised William Pashabo. And William Pashabo was a chief of the Tuolumne Anishinaabe on our own volition and under our own law and authority and dominion over ourselves and our land. We accepted him. And he became one of us. And now this is important because that's agency. And what this directly applies to what's going on right now with the Métis incursions into our homeland. They're claiming that man as being their ancestor, but he wasn't. He was a Tuolumne Anishinaabe because we adopted him under our own laws. That's agency. And we have the agency today to decide who is Tuolumne Anishinaabe and who is not. And we know who those people are. We have because we did that big long court case and all that history on both on the oral tradition and also the early records, churches and the trade records, we know who was where when and who lived where. And that's all been recorded. So because of these recordings, we know who our people are. So when you have someone that says that they have some of those people may have been related to some of those people, but are they Tuolumne Anishinaabe? No, because we decide who is Tuolumne Anishinaabe, and no one else does. So that's why we can say, without a doubt, that we know who our people are, and we know who our ancestors are, and who our descendants are. And that's why we have that camp down at Pond Lake. Those people have no rights as Indigenous people in this land. Because everybody who is a Tuolumne Anishinaabe, who is a real Indigenous person in this land, has been recognized. And we did that all through history, and we did it again publicly, and that's one of the things we presented in the court. In 1975, we again asserted our authority to decide who our people are. This is agency. This was what I mean about agency. We decided who our people were. Not if you were a status Indian or a non-status Indian or a small Métis, as some people would like to say, because they could conflate that whole notion of being capital M Métis with being of mixed race. But we know who those people are, like again I'm saying. So that's why we're defending our land against these people. And that's why we are going to sue them, probably, as far as I know, because this is a unraveling of the history of the country. This is it's gamemanship. What the province of Ontario and Canada is doing right now with Métis rights in Ontario and in other parts, and in Alberta and Saskatchewan, is gamemanship. It's to erode the Indigenous inherent rights of the Indigenous people. And I know that, and I swear by that. So this is very confusing. It erodes the treaty relationship. don't forget, a lot of the treaties were before Confederation. And those treaties are still valid, but they're dismissed. So this is a way of eroding all of that. The whole notion of indigenous. How many indigenous people can you have in one place? Well, we've been here for 10,000 years, so I think that that's a pretty good indication of who's indigenous and who's not, right? So agency is an important thing to know, that we did not get duped. We knew what we were doing. We exercise authority, and we always have. And this is what we presented to the court. And the court said, well, yeah, Tamagi Anishinaabe can decide who the people are. That has nothing to do with who's a status Indian. It's who the people are and who we decide. So because the status was what separating the people, making happen, because the whole purpose of the Indian Act is to get rid of Indians. So they took some of our people, say, oh, you're not a Tamagami Indian. And we have a petition, 1907. All my grandfather's names on there. That, these are who our people are. And then the Indian agent or the federal government can say, oh no, you're not, she's not, and then you can lose your status by marrying someone who's not a status Indian. Anyway, so it's a huge game. And here we are to talk about it today. Now I put this picture up because it's not a very clear picture. I don't know if anyone's ever seen a really clear picture of this, but if you can, it's 1928. It was called the Indians Barnstorming hockey tour. These men, my grandfather is in there, my great uncle John Turner, and my great uncle William Turner, my cousin William Friday, and who else is it? And George Pashabo, who was a distant relative, but George Pashabo was the son of William Pashabo, the chief. And so they were all incredible natural athletes. So getting dispossessed from the land now in the 20s here, late 20s, Fridays built a camp on Lake Tamagi at Friday's Point. And they were guides. John Turner built a lot of those beautiful cottages on Lake Tamagi. So we became this kind of, working for the man, so to speak. And, but they were networking, setting up with these wealthy Americans and people in Southern Ontario too, setting up this tour to go and play hockey, to make money in the winter because they've been dispossessed and forced off of the trap lines. And so, or flooded out. And also persecuted for trapping and hunting without a license, for cutting firewood. If you didn't have a permit from the province of Ontario to cut firewood, this is how the persecution happened here. This is all about the dispossession, right? So these men decided that what they were going to do was dress up like Indians, call themselves, the C is the Fighting Crees, I think it is. Cree Indians and the Great Cree Indians and the Fast Ojibwe Indians. And they went on a exhibition hockey tour they played at Maple Leaf Gardens. They also played in Boston and other places where they had clientele from their hunting and fishing work during the summer. So they set themselves up to go and do this. They dressed up like Indians and they put on a show for the man. And that is agency. I showed this picture to someone that I know quite well who considers herself to be an ally. And she said, oh, it's so sad. They're caricatures of themselves. No, they had agency. They knew what they were doing. This is entrepreneurial spirit. So there's many stories like this. So that's one of the things I wanted to talk about, is about the agency that we have. And when we put out something like this, the notice of jurisdiction, I think to myself, now what? How do we do that? This is still our agency. We're still going to do what we need to do because we're obligated to do it for starters. So that's That's my big agency spiel. I've been thinking about this a lot lately because people don't recognize our agency. Do you understand what I mean? People? Yeah. Eh? And and we bought into that too, ourselves, because we don't see it from this. So anyway, so it's a story to be told. So let's get back to this now. So in document 9, Tamami Anishinaabe territory, 4,000 square miles, 10,000 years of continuous occupation. Our creation story is at Smoothwater Lake, not at Smoothwater Lodge, but Smoothwater Lake. And so the archaeology does prove the 7,000 years. So the two highest points in Ontario, water. So bioregions and watersheds. So this is where we are. We're locating ourselves. So we have this vision of coexistence that was first brought forward in a very tangible and explicit way, right, by Gary Potts back in the beginning in the 70s and into the 90s, particularly. So in the 90s, early 90s, we did have an agreement. But anyway, so stewardship of document 9 is a foundation for a relationship agreement with Ontario and Canada. And what does that mean? That means we need to have a relationship. We don't have to surrender and say, okay, you can have title. No, you can't have title. We say this to the Crown, right? It's the Crown that's asserting title. This is the false narrative that we as Indigenous people have bought into. Like that we are having land claims. Hell no, it's the Crown. The Crown is asserting title on our land. We've got it all backwards. It's time we told ourselves a new story, the truth. And the sky will not fall. So there's reconciliation of the inherent rights of Tamami Anishinaabe with the people of Ontario and Canada. Aboriginal title and interest in a land is maintained through truth-telling and coexistence and co-jurisdiction, and the responsibility to steward the land. I mean, that's a direct responsibility from the Creator. This is your land, you have to look after it. I give you this. So then, of course, I think you're all familiar. I didn't show this to you guys last year, eh? I hope not, no. But this is just a little bit of sort of a trip down memory lane for many of you. You know, the Red Squirrel Road activism in 88, Gulag Road 89. And at the same time, Clayoquot Sound was going on, and the United Nations report Our Common Future. We had land cautions, freezing registration of title on 4,000 square miles of land, while 110 townships. And the Aboriginal title defense was headed to the Supreme Court of Canada. And so, you know, they relied on the doctrine of discovery and the justice system. So, like I said, legal theft. It's about land, and it will always be about land. Without land, what do we have, right? Any of us. So here's some interesting stuff on earth roots. But you see how they had the blockade and the number of arrests. So these are all the, yeah. Boy, those were heady times, weren't they? You remember the big chainsaw down at Queen's Park? That was fun. So that I like to say.
The bridge burnings.
Pardon?
You missed the bridge burnings.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I like to say, this is a picture of Tamami old growth, and on the right is a white pine tree. I got this off of Marlon's Facebook page. And so there's some other, this is the one with Bob Ray there, Gary, and the man with the fur hat, the beaver hat is Frank Beardy. And there's Arnie Hakala, see with the suede jacket?
Was that Arnie?
That's Arnie, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, dear old Arnie. So we had the Wendovan Stewardship Authority. And so Wendovan means like from where the sun is coming, like so we had this idea like that it would be symbolic of a new day, new beginning, and enlightenment, coexistence. So and also the Wendovan hunting grounds were partially in the stewardship area. In Chibajin, where the spirit live, is situated in the Wendovan grounds. So it symbolizes sacredness of land, cultural identity attached to land. And Ontario had planned to make like a Northern Ontario place at Maple Mountain, and they wanted to put a ski hill there. And So that was kind of when that was like the last straw. And so we filed the cautions on 110 townships, and that was in 1973. And then this is just a picture of Glendoven. It's facing east on Lake Tamale. This is from my brother's deck, actually, at China. And then there's the little T that was the 4 townships that are part of the Glendoven stewardship, and you can see where they're situated in the some of the family hunting grounds. And Acadia was one of those, and that all that hauling is coming out of Acadia right now, I think. But the principles were sustained life, sustainable development, public participation, coexistence. Sustained life was about we protect the life of the land in and of itself, because sustainable development was always a progress development, economic, same old economic kind of model. Like that language got, so we added the other one. So we did a whole bunch of work, and there still is a forest stewardship plan, which actually would be kind of good to dust it off maybe and see what's left there. But anyway, so it was a 50-50 co-jurisdiction with Ontario. We had a veto. And the idea was developing a shared land ethic and consensus. So that's what we were doing. So of course, we needed to have a better management unit. We needed watersheds. And the Minister of Natural Resources fought against us tooth and nail, even though the minister at the time, Bud Wildman, said that we were the Minister of Natural Resources in this territory. We had all the power, authority that he did was delegated to us for the time being, because it was going to be a legal agreement that would actually spell those things out afterward. But the ministry wasn't very cooperative. So anyway, so stewardship of a document is our sacred trust, and so with traditional environmental knowledge and Anishinaabe values, we take the leadership role to protect the water and ecosystems in Undocumented, and they're developing a shared land ethic versus corporate colonialism. Like, we're all under the threat of colonialism now, as we all feel. I mean, literally feel. Many opportunities for partnerships and regional prosperity. So the Glendoven stewardship model of shared jurisdiction is workable, just, and necessary to provide for generations not yet born. So it was a model that actually had some traction for a while. And then there's undocumented. So we wanted to put, so in the area that's in the heavy outline would have been the area that the Glendoven Stewardship Authority would have eventually covered. So we're looking at, and then just this notion of water. There's some waterfalls. I think this one though is over by Wolf Lake and Sudbury somewhere. So, what have we been doing? We have a new water policy that we just have amended. It was done about a year ago, but it didn't quite say what we wanted it to say, so it was written on the fly. So we actually took some time to say what we really wanted to say in a nutshell. And so here it is. The Creator placed Tuatha Anishinaabe on Undocumented. Here on Undocumented, there are gifts given to Tuatha Anishinaabe to look after: water, fire, earth, and wind. Within the boundaries of Undocumented are the 2 highest points of the land in the province of Ontario: Ishpemabem, Ishpetina Ridge, and G-Bage, Maple Mountain. We are blessed with abundant clean water. Water from the Tuatha watershed flows south and west into Georgian Bay and east into Lake Temiskaming and the Ottawa River. To care for the land, we must care for the water. We can no longer afford to accept Canada's view of the water as a commodity. Water is fundamental to all life. We should strive for a world where the waters flowing out of Undocumented are as pure and clean as they are at their source in the headwaters. Thus, we will sustain and maintain our land for all future generations. All policy objectives and goals should flow from this fundamental statement. So the idea is that with this as the overarching policy for all land uses in Undocumented, then we have something that we can actually measure and use as a standard for what kinds of activities will happen, where, when, and how. It's a big job, I know, but Well, I think that it has to be possible. So again, no surrender. We are the living title to the land. So we're looking at these ideas now. Indigenous protected and conservation areas, Indigenous land trust, looking at becoming the park and game wardens as an interim measure into sort of how we could move into um, actually having a lot of influence on the land and doing the monitoring work where we would so the parks. I was talking to Mercedes this summer and she was saying she went to some meetings where the Ontario government is really trying to get people to use the Temagami parks more and to bring more people here. If that's the case, all of that still needs to be monitored and managed. And so how do we do that? So we're looking at if we started to put our outpost camps out on the land under the auspices of being park and game wardens to monitor these things and start doing some water studies as well, those kinds of things, that we would be able to basically start to transition to this notion of watershed stewardship and having outpost camps where we could move into a conservation economy. For lack of a better word, it's tourism is kind of, that doesn't quite, it's more like a natural experience or and it's an adventure maybe, or an experience of some sort. I experience Temagami, as they say, but anyway, the what the idea would be here would be to have cultural, ecological, and cultural expeditions or experiences or that sort of thing. And maybe we could even get people to pay to come and plant trees. I'm not sure, but that you know, and so there has to be other ways. So because this old resource extraction business it has to be done here. I mean, what's going on right now at the last of that old growth being cut for a few people, and it's a rotten system, and so we need to move into another economy. Will the townspeople go along with a different kind of economy as opposed to extractive resource extraction? I think they would, because we're at the point now in time where people can really see that something needs to change drastically. And we're holdups. The Temagami Anishinaabe are holdups. We're kind of like almost in the same position we were before the white man ever came here. I mean, that's our chief actually said that, like not that long ago. But all of us, like, because of the height of the land and because this area is so rugged, it has taken this long for people to really make a mess here, like in a big way, with these big, huge roads, these thoroughfares. Like in 1950, they didn't have the technology to build a Red Squirrel Road. So this has all just happened in the last, 50, 60 years. So we are kind of like, that was one of the salvations, saving factors, I think, for Temagami. And then I think Bruce Hodgins points that out in his book as well, that it's the inaccessibility and the ruggedness, which also makes it so beautiful and valuable to so many people, but also has, maybe we're still at a place where we can do some restoration work before we tip beyond, and the water is actually not pure water that we can drink anymore. And maybe they're going to come and take that water away. I have these fears about water trucks rolling down the Red Squirrel Road and the Turner Road, and this is real. And I find this very scary stuff, for me anyway. But I'm sure you all do too. But I'm just some of the things I don't know. I'm crazy. I don't know. But some other things we can look at: World Heritage Site. Why would this not be a World Heritage Site? Just with the Nistagan or the canoes. They're 3,000 years old, some of them, right? Why is that not a World Heritage feature? Why would it not be? Just for the water, it could be a World Heritage Site. This is fresh water. There is very little of it left in the world. Anyway, so we need to be doing monitoring and we need to build capacity. So those have been some of the things that we're talking about now, trying to make partnerships with universities to do studies. Because, you know, we don't have a lot of capacity. We need to, once it started with this water policy, we could start now doing maybe some fisheries work and start looking, because things are getting really to, like I say, I think we're at the point where we really need to get a handle on all these things and change course before it's too late. And so that's what I know that there's lots of work that we could do together, just even the ideas and the planning and getting because so many academics are really interested in doing this work, and the idea of the Indigenous protected and conservation areas, I think that it can happen. Now, the federal government is going to do some water legislation probably in the fall, maybe this early winter. Patty Hadju announced it about First Nations water rights. And ultimately, it's being touted as something, the first legislation to be done in this kind of close consultation with First Nations, which is AFN, which is Indian Chiefs and Councils, which is that whole federal construct. Anyway, so they have that going on. So that's what she's saying, is that this was done collaboratively, and the first legislation to come out of the UNDRIP, United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, and Canada's commitment to that. Well, what it is it's an attempt to strip Indigenous peoples of their water rights. Because what they're going to say is that First Nations water rights, they should need to have water rights, and they need to be able to have agency about what happens with the water on reserve. Meaning they get the rest of it. And it's a setup. Another one. It's endless how they can, it's the same story. It's the same construct as was happening many years ago. But anyway, so that's what's happening. So the water issue is becoming very, very important, globally, of course, but locally here because of Temagami, deep water by the shore, and also because of this impending legislation. So, oh, I'm sorry about that. I should turn that off. So water is life, and I'm so sorry. Oh, that's my mother's passed away, so anyway, so we have this is So I like to say this sometimes with other people, younger people. We have two jobs in life. You know, after all my time on Earth, I've said we have two jobs: look after the Earth, our home, and look after each other. So that's and merci, merci, thank you. And this is an old quote from Gary, which the industrialists want to make and document in a desert, and the environmentalists want to make it a zoo. I left it in there. Yeah, that sounds like Gary, doesn't it? So now, I left it in there because I think we're beyond this though now. Because right now, we're all being colonized. Like by corporate, we're losing our water, we're losing our trees, we've all got a lot to lose. And my theory is my theory, but my whole reason, I guess, to what I've worked at very much, all along has been to protect this land. I love this land. I think it's beautiful. I think it is probably one of the most beautiful places in the world. And I know people like on Lake Temagami who are very wealthy people that have houses in every freaking continent, in the world. And they say that Temagami is one of the most beautiful places in the entire world. And and it's just cutting down the trees still and taking away the life of the land. So I think we're kind of beyond this, but but it's always a good little quote. So with all of that, I mean, I just want to say thank you so much for listening to me, and I hope I made a little bit of sense. So,
Very much.
Thank you.
okay.
Mary, I am trapped over in this corner here. But just on behalf of everyone here today and our organization, we'd like to thank you with deep gratitude for letting us speak with us again today. We love listening to you speak, and I think we can all take away many good things from what you have to share with us. We do have a gift for you, but it's not quite ready yet, so we have to send that to
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
And
No,
with your
no bark
permission-
this year.
What's that?
No bark this year.
No bark.
Are you in costume? Well, PG gave me some. He says, I brought you. He says, I brought you some bark back. He says, right? I said, bark back. It's land back, PJ. Anyway, but thank you so much, and thank you for Anna. I don't know if anybody has. Am I keeping us from dinner? So I would entertain questions, or I can stay for a bit. At dinner or whatever.
Dinner has been pushed to 6:30.
Pardon?
Dinner's been pushed until 6:30.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really just social time.
Okay.
So however,
All right.
the next hour and a half is 2 hours.
Excellent.
I'd like to say, Mary, just, I'm sorry you weren't with us, an hour before you arrived, because we had a conversation that really parallels, I think, some of the things you mentioned there, specifically with the significance of this area and the potential for a World Heritage Site. And I didn't use the term World Heritage Site, but I think that sums up what I was trying to say earlier when I did talk about the unique aspect of Temagami and the existence of a mostly intact Nastagan that I think is unique. But by using the term World Heritage Site, I think that really summarizes what I was trying to say earlier. So thank you. I think we're on the same page with that.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. Yeah, because there's lots of ways to go at it, eh? Different groups with different mandates and different sort of applications, I guess, for campaigns. The idea, though, is to draw attention to what we're trying to do as Friends of Temagami and as the Temagami Anishinaabe is to really protect and conserve a very beautiful, unique area. Because to not do so would be sinful, I guess, for lack of a better word. And so I think there's lots of ways that we can do that. And different, like I say, different campaigns. Like I just was reading about an Indigenous land trust there just the other day, and and then we start getting into areas now too about food sovereignty, water, food sovereignty, right, for Indigenous people particularly, and then these land trusts. There's lots of different ways, and I think that over the many generations of the same people being here, I think there's a lot of interest from people on the lake and on the big lake and on the smaller lakes too, to be able to really put some energy and money into getting some of these things off the ground. But the idea is to bring focus. Oh yeah. So one of the things that Marvin and I had this discussion. I said, we should have a thing about, because I think, okay, if Grey Owl used us, well, anyway, even if he didn't use us, he was married in, he didn't, but the thing is that, well, I don't know why we don't claim it. We are the ones that made Grey Owl, and Grey Owl is an international figure, the first internationally renowned environmentalist, he and his wife, and that's what I was saying. Why don't we reclaim Grey Owl, as I was telling Marvin, and because so many people know about it, and we could bring this kind of Grey Owl kind of, they tried it before in Temagami. They had a Grey Owl festival, Because I'm way past the point of saying, of being mad that people would rather hear about Grey Owl than the real McCoy, if you know what I mean, like the real Anishinaabe, right? And I thought like that, and I thought, well, yeah, what is the value of all of this is that Grey Owl is very famous, and he did do good work, and he was a good writer, and he had access where we did not have access. So why don't we reclaim Grey Owl? Marvin says, reconcile Grey Owl. I thought, what a great idea. So catchy, eh? I love those little catchy things, right? So reconciling Grey Owl. Wouldn't that make a great conference? Wouldn't that, hey, maybe FOT could partner with some people, Tom and Anishinaabe or different people, and have a conference, reconciling Grey Owl. Why not? And people don't want to touch Grey Owl, eh? Like even because I have a friend that's making a film. His name is Peter Blow. He's a filmmaker. He wants to make this film about Grey Owl. And Grey Owl's Anna Harrio's niece is working with him, and she's a friend of mine. She lives in Saskatchewan. She actually looks after the park where Grey Owl is, and looks after the Grey Owl Anna Harrio settlement there or whatever they have. Anyway, so he wants to make this film, and he approached everybody. He says nobody will touch it because they don't want to touch Grey Owl. They don't want to get all the indigenous people all mad, because he's considered this pretendian again agency. So I'm thinking, let's use Grey Owl. Why not? We made him. He could have went somewhere else. He could have went to I don't know, Chapleau or Mattawa or well, he was there too, but places. But he came here first. This is where he became Grey Owl, and so we can claim him, and we should reconcile that whole thing about Grey Owl because love him or hate him, he is famous and he could draw attention here in a way that we would want to, in a historical, academic sense, and also in a very as a lightning rod for that kind of discussion we want to have, the truth telling and the relationship between peoples. I don't know. I think it's a good idea. Something that could be marketable. And there are a lot of Grey Owl scholars. We have a couple actually, locally too. So just an idea. Anyway, thanks.
Can we steal your land acknowledgement?
For sure. Yeah.
But I sort of like more seriously, I'm a little bit offended, or maybe I don't know if I even have the right to be offended, but that it's just words, and settlers have stolen a lot of stuff with lawyers and words, and it sort of rings hollow or shallow in my ears, and I wonder if you see it somewhat that way as well, and what it really means to you. I mean, you're very holistic and grounded person, and that comes across. But I think a lot of white people are very sort of analytic, left brain, and obsessed with words, and they can make them spin them to whatever is their advantage. And I just wonder, is there some way that can sort of evolve as to be more than just words, to mean something?
Exactly.
Like the land acknowledgement just seems like, okay, yeah, we're on this land, our job's done, and there's no next step. And I just wonder, what do you see as, like, do we get it really wrong there? Is that insulting? What is the next step?
Well, see that. Well, the first step has to be the acknowledgement that the land was actually stolen.
Yes.
And that is not an easy thing. So, like, if I had this conversation with a friend of mine, and he said to me, "So are you?" And I said, "It's our land, And he says, "So, like, are you telling me that the title or piece of paper that I have, title is worth nothing?" I said, "Yeah, it's really not worth anything. It's just a piece of paper." And and the president of the Tamale Lakes Association said to me that he was talking about my island, and I said, "No, you have no idea how that makes the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. When you go, my island. I said, we don't even say that. Why is it your island? Because you happen to live there. Because you happen to live there right now, you know? So I think it's a matter of not having that sort of mind, I can do what I want with it. That has to be the first kind of acknowledgement. It's not. It is our land. I mean, it is Indigenous land. We have the original title, and it doesn't just disappear. That's why the living title to the land notion is a really strong notion. So what I hear you say is your question is how do we make that more real? Make it move to the next thing. Is that first of all that acknowledgement and all that means? That's a big like 180 or whatever when you say like it's a big about face, right? That's a whole new narrative. And that is a huge acknowledgement if people could actually get their minds around it. Because then the next step to that is, so if this is Indigenous land, then I need to work with those people because I enjoy this land too. And together we need to do what's best for this land. And they know. That's the next thing. And that's all we've been talking about. So that's what I mean. We don't have to surrender title. And that's what the government wants. They want us to say that the underlying title inures to the crown. And so we say, no, it doesn't. We have the underlying title. So, and that's a big, big difference. Like the whole country is built on that notion, the doctrine of discovery. So to make it real is to actually have that as being a truth that is palatable and can be worked with together. Like Mrs. Bernardo, who owns Camp Waupikon, she's a tenant there now. We had a nice discussion. I said we could work together to look after this land. Now that you're living on our village site, and now you have your recreation camp on our village site, we really need to have that acknowledged, and we really need to work together to have that acknowledged by other people and the kids that come there to that camp and their parents that come there to that camp. So I don't know. What's your name?
Ted.
Ted. So that's really how I see that being the next step is, and I think that would because people feel threatened by that, right? Like it's a threatening thing when you say, "No, you don't own land, we do." It took me a long time to say this publicly. There is no such thing as crown land.
So we need a lot of humility, in other words.
Pardon?
We need a lot of humility.
Well, yeah. That's not true. But I mean, it took a long time for me to say that. To have the courage to say that.
It's appreciated.
Thanks.
Mary, can you talk about this? This is the first time I'm seeing this, and what's going to happen next with it?
Well, yes, it's being sent to all of the First Nations around us, because we have incursions by First Nations, other First Nations too. Because anyway, companies, towns, and it's just basically states the truth. And like I say, it feels kind of feeble sometimes. We say, okay, this is, but so that's why I put this in the context of the agency that I was telling you about. We say those things to ourselves. This is my land, or we don't even really have to say that. It's a I don't even know. In the language in Anishinaabe, it would probably sound different anyway, or mean something different. But we bought into that ourselves, into that narrative.
And this is definitely changing the narrative.
That's right.
It's
Yeah.
laying the baseline
That's
as
right.
the Anishinaabe being here.
When I think a land, like this tradition here for it was passed on to me. But I never looked at myself as a mourner, emotional, and promise wants to own it, I know that. I don't think it's up to owner, I'm there to caretake it and share with people of my choice. That's what I think anyway. I may be wrong, but I don't pay taxes, so.
Mary,
Thanks, Alex.
we can chat more about this
Yeah.
later.
Okay.
As an organization, would it be of value for us to take this notice of jurisdiction and build it into, you know, our mission statement and that sort of thing, to acknowledge that it's there and that we will do, you know, take whatever effort there needs to be to follow this notice?
Good
I would
idea.
think so, yeah.
Good idea.
It's for us, it's one of the, you know, we're probably one of the easier ones to do it. We don't stand to make any money, we don't stand to lose, you know, there's nothing to be lost, only good things for us, right?
Yeah.
Which you could make that point for anybody that's looking at this document. But it would be something that would be easy for us to at least incorporate into and then move forward with, right? And really, I mean, the biggest impact that we have on the land is really, you know, paddling a canoe and you know, treading the portages and the stocking and
Yeah, I think, you know, that Friends of Temagami and other people too, but I mean other groups and organizations, the colleges, the camps and all that, we could be a little bit more coordinated about monitoring it. You know, and have some sort of a checklist or something like about the even inventory. We have a hard time getting forest resources inventory because it's all done by satellite and the companies own it apparently. They don't share it, right? Not like before, you could go in our office and say, hey, let me see the map for a block, whatever, you know, and it'd be like all the different colors for corresponding to the tree species, right? And ages. Yeah. So there I think those kinds of things too would really be helpful, you know?
yeah.
As a place to start. But bringing attention to the area, like as Michael was talking about, you know, earlier, I think is really something that we get on some sort of a campaign to bring attention to what is being lost here as we speak. We're rolling trucks out of it starting tomorrow, I guess, on Monday, right?
Yeah,
And it means it's all cut.
16th, yeah.
I mean, you know, and I don't know. So there are people that want to make films, maybe, and you know, things like that, because people should really see what's going on. There are some deep pockets in the Toronto area that I think that might be able to help. You know, it's really hard to manage so many things that need to be looked after when you know we have limited resources, as you know. I'm sure the Friends of Toronto have big ideas of little money, same way as like a lot of you know. But there has to be some things that we can do.
Sure.
Hey, hi, John. Yeah, well, thank you so much for being here. It's nice to be able to sort of speak freely and to preach to the choir, so to speak. You know, but it's nice to share the ideas and also to share where we're at right now. And that whole thing with the waterfalls is a shift for us, you know, internally with the Toronto First Nation with regards to being like trying to be economically doing this old-fashioned economics.
Right.
That's the other thing. That economic paradigm, that economic model is passe. Passe. So.
Do you notice a shift in opinion in your own community or even
Yeah, I think lately the younger people are starting to. The older people and the younger people get it. It's people in the middle that are sort of busy doing whatever, living, I guess, you know, raising children and caring for the elder that, I'm not really sure, but I think so. It was, it's because of the narrative.